What is going on, writers? Welcome to the writer's room once again. Good to see you all here. Good to be here with you. I hope you're all doing well. Tom in the chat, Anderson, Mary, Bill Cosby's here. Oh no. Corey's here, Space Junk, Joe Gut, Tamana, Timberly. What is going on? In the Discord, I see Spencer. I need help. Hellpop. I never get that name. Thomas, Josh, Antobar. Good to see you all here. Good to have you guys in. Vasilis is here. Oh, I remember you. It's been a minute since you've been in. What is going on, everybody? Today, I want to start the stream off with some stuff I was working on a little bit today for some videos that will be coming out. I made a strong drink. Let's go. Bill Cosby making a strong drink in the chat. Uh-oh. Xavier, good to see you. Kayla, good to see you. Ayo Sword, what is going on? All right, let's hop into it today. What I want to discuss to get us started today is back on the external layer of a story, and particularly a story's concept. So in a story, right, we talk about this word concept a lot, right? What's the concept of a story? And sometimes it's difficult to understand what that concept actually is and what that actually means. And a couple of streams ago, I was talking about how the concept is the setting and the characters in their hierarchy. But there's really three layers here. So I talked about how a chessboard explains the external layer of a story, in the sense that if you have a chessboard, this is my quickly and poorly drawn chessboard for you. Right, you get the idea. If we've got a chessboard, we have the board itself, right, which is the setting for the game. We have our pieces, right? There's a rook. Here's another rook. We've got our knights. Wow, that's a terrible, terrible, terrible knight. We have our king. We got our queen, right? We have these pieces in the board, right? We've got our rooks over here, our bishops, so on and so forth, right? And these mirror our characters. And then I talked about how the entire chess game itself, right, is the concept of the game. And there's one other element that I did not include. I talked about setting. I talked about characters. And there's also the rules of the concept, right? So in a chess game, the rules of the game is how you actually play, how the different pieces move, how you can capture pieces, how you can organize pieces, what you can and cannot do within the concept of a chess game is the rules of the chess game, right? Let me make sure I'm showing. Oh, wow, I am not showing my desktop. Whoops. Sorry, guys. You got all this stuff going on, but here we go. Let me just go over this again. My apologies, ladies and gentlemen of the live stream. Now you can see my horribly ugly chessboard that I was drawing this whole time, and my terribly drawn pieces. I should have just pulled up another picture of a chessboard, but I didn't, and we're rolling with it. This is what we're doing today. We're going with this. Okay, so to reiterate, the concept contains these three elements, right? We've got the setting, we have the characters themselves, and there's two pieces about characters I want to discuss. And the third thing I did not talk about is the rules. And so when we're looking at a chess game, we have the setting, which is the actual board that they're on, right? We have the chess pieces, which mirror the characters. And we have the actual rules of the chess game that dictate how you actually play the game. And these three elements together create the concept of a chess game, right? In the external layer of the story, right? Because a chess game is not philosophically important or emotionally important unless you make it so with like human beings that are actually playing the game. And now suddenly it can become philosophically and emotionally important, but the game itself is only external, right? It does not, it's just a physical game. It doesn't have any inherent meaning to it unless the meaning is placed onto it by the particular individuals that are playing the game at that particular time. Now, which is why it is a useful tool to discuss how a concept works. Now, I also talked about characters in their hierarchy in their physical hierarchy as an important part of your concept, in the sense of a king is going to be of a higher physical hierarchy than a pawn, let's say, right? If this is my pawn in here, I've got these little pawns. The king is more important than a pawn. The rook is more important than a bishop, and so on in the game. And in your story, there's going to be this similar kind of physical hierarchy. If you remember from yesterday's stream, I was looking at the show Succession, and Logan Roy is the main billionaire mogul in the story. He is essentially the king of the chessboard in that story. And so the entire dynamic, the physical hierarchy, all fall into place around Logan Roy in that show, and it creates an important element of the external conflict and how we're actually going through the story. The other part of this is the actual, let's say, physical powers or skills. You could also term this tools in a story that characters are going to have, okay? And so whether you are telling a story that has like a super high concept, where you've got like superheroes or something like this, then that is going to play into the particular powers that characters might have, right? If you look at the Marvel films, the different characters like Thor and Hulk and Iron Man, they all have their own sets of powers, skills, and tools that make them physically different and physically useful in different ways to the dynamic of how the story plays. Now, that also applies to stories that have a lower type of concept, because in the same way, people in real life, even if have particular skills, particular tools, even if they are not like super, right? Remember when I was talking about Kitchen Nightmares? In Kitchen Nightmares, Gordon Ramsay has particular power, skills, and tools in regards to how to make food properly, how to serve. All of these things that make him a master chef are part of his physical powers, right? His physical toolkit. And so no matter what kind of story you're telling, your characters are going to have some sort of physical skills, even if it's like a knowledge base, right? If you look at something like Jurassic Park, the archaeologists in that story, they have a particular knowledge base about dinosaurs that they then are able to use in the story, and that becomes part of their physical powers or their physical toolkit, right? And then there is this key element, which is the rules of the story's world, right? Now, this can vary dramatically, but it is very important to understand, because whatever the rules of that story are, this is how you create something that is like high concept. Sometimes the setting can create something that's high concept. Sometimes the physical powers, skills, and tools that a particular character has makes it high concept, but all of those things end up coming from the rules that you are creating for the story, right? So, for example, if you're telling a story about the Hulk, right, which is a Marvel character, and the fact that he gets angry and turns green and gets super strength and this mega invincibility, then he then that is part of the rules of the story world, right? You set the rules up for the audience so they have an understanding of what kind of story we're looking at. And through that understanding, now you actually have your high concept. Or if you look at a story like Liar, Liar with Jim Carrey, he is incapable of telling a lie. I believe that's what it is. He's incapable of telling a lie. Let me check my notes here. And then everyone else in the world is normal, but he has a particular power or skill or inhibition that now creates this high concept story. And so understanding and thinking about these different layers, right? You can obviously organically come to these different things by just having ideas, right? When you're going to have an idea about a story, you're usually going to start with a setting. You're usually going to start with characters of some kind, but being more specific about these different layers helps you create a more fleshed out story world and ultimately a more fleshed out concept. And so this is something that's definitely can be overlooked in the sense that you need to understand what the story rules are and if they are different from a normal world, right? Or different from, I don't even want to say that because every story is going to have its own rules, even if, like, you are always establishing what can and cannot happen in a story because you're also not all-knowing to the realm of reality. You have no idea what actually can and cannot necessarily happen. We have our sort of normal, culturally defined realm of what's going on, but we don't know, we don't know everything. So the point is, you have to establish the rules of your story world. And to establish those rules, you have to know what they are. And so, in the same way that a chess game has rules to how the different pieces can move, right? Pawns move forward, the knights move in an L shape, the rooks can move sideways and forwards and backwards, but they cannot move diagonally. The bishops can move diagonally, and so on. Understanding those rules, it is the same for your story. And so this is then understanding these three elements of a concept. Now you can think about different kinds of stories in different ways based on using these three elements of a concept in different ways. So, for example, you will see people talk about like fish out of water stories, right? What is a fish out of water story? All a fish out of water story is you're taking some sort of underdog character and placing them in a dominant setting. And in that dominant setting, there are also sort of dominant characters that oppose them. Right? So even before we've got into the philosophy of your story or even the emotion of your story, you can make this very clear. We've got an underdog character in a dominant world. An example of this would be Elf, right? The movie Elf, where one of Santa's elves travels to New York City. And so we have this elf character in this massive city full of all these different characters and all these different things that challenge that character in different ways. And there's a lot of different avenues that this can take. So I talked about the Boondocks in, I believe it was my previous stream. And in the Boondocks, we have our black family. And they are inside an upper class white neighborhood. And so now we have the same sort of thing. We have our group of underdog characters in this dominant world. Let's see, another example. So you can also have, like Breaking Bad also works this way, right? And Breaking Bad starts off kind of fish out of water, but then morphs over time. So what's interesting about Breaking Bad is we start with a fish out of water character, right? We have this underdog chemistry teacher. Inside the dominant world of crime. And for the beginning of the show, let's say like the first season or two, something like that, it starts off with this. But then it morphs into what I would say like world versus world. And what I mean by world versus world is characters and setting, characters plus setting versus characters plus setting. And so what happens is Walter White becomes more and more a part of the criminal world, and then we have Paul, or was it not Paul, Hank, not Paul Schrader, Hank Schrader, and the DEA versus Walter White and his, criminal world. And so, again, understanding that you're just mixing and matching these three ideas in different way and always placing them in conflict, right? Because just like a chessboard, we need the black pieces versus the white pieces. We need side one versus side two, right? If we do not have conflict, we would not have a story. And so it kind of works that way. And so I started off by talking about these two pieces here. But I wanted to introduce this idea of understanding what your rules are of your world. That's what makes it a full concept, in the sense of that's how you can make something high concept. That's how you can make something that is unexpected or different because you have particular story rules, right? Or The Truman Show, for example, another one starring Jim Carrey, is that we have this character, the underdog character, in this world that has been constructed for him, right? He's living inside of a TV show. And so the rules of that high concept story are all about how this world works, how he actually is trapped within this TV show, and how they make it function, right? How they use fear to keep him in line, and all of these, and how they use characters that are his friends to come in and out. Those create the rules of the show that then impact the characters and setting, right? So these three elements all tie in together, and they're very inseparable. Because if you look at something like Boondocks, in the Boondocks, you have the characters versus the setting, right? Black family versus white neighborhood. But then you also have the rules of that world and how things are able to happen, because the Boondocks has an anime style to it. And so if you watch the show, you will see that they have anime style fights. They can also have anime style changes in the neighborhood, where characters can come in and make massive changes or kind of be larger than life because it's a cartoon, and they're able to play with that cartoon anime aesthetic to really do a lot of fun things. Laporta asks, how do we tell if our idea is high concept or not? Good question. So a lot of high concept ideas are going to come out of how wacky or off the wall your story rules are, right? So if you have a high concept, let's say, there's different ways that this can happen. And the biggest way it's going to happen is it's going to be your story rules are going to be unique, right? Your story has some sort of unique story rules that make it different, right? And that don't just make it a like sci-fi setting or something like that, right? But you actually have rules within the story that make it strange. For example, in Inception, Christopher Nolan's Inception has very unique story rules in the sense of it is this dream heist story where our characters are going into other people's minds and going into the layers of their mind, right? The fact that there's even layers of their mind that they can go through, already these are story rules, right? The fact that they can go into someone's dream to incept an idea or take information out and do this dream heist is based on these story rules. And so if you want to create a high concept story, you need to have a clear understanding of what your story rules are, and that will be the basis for how it works. Now, those story rules can also be connected to an individual character, as we see in something like Liar Liar, where one character is strange or different, and then the entire world is normal around them, and now they have to navigate this story. In the same way, you could say that like Groundhog Day has story rules that are connected to one individual character, where all the other characters are living normally, but then we have one character that is repeating the loop of this day infinitely. And that is based on the rules of the story, and those rules are kind of attached to one character directly. There's a few Groundhog Day style movies that are out there. Another one that I've seen, I think it's called Palm Springs. It's the one with that guy from The Lonely Island. I think the movie's called Palm Springs. If I am correct, you guys can let me know. But in that movie, it is multiple people that are interacting with the time loop, right? So it's not just one person, multiple people are interacting with the time loop. And so the story rules sort of get bigger and have more to do with the setting and multiple characters. But ultimately, it doesn't matter if it's one or the other. It's like your high concept is coming from story rules. That is how you need to think about a high concept. And so that could be based on time. It can be based on dreams. It can be based on one character having some sort of superhuman ability or superhuman problem, right? That's what's making it high concept. Palm Springs is the name of that movie. Thank you, Spencer. And then you could say that other stories, like let's say Indiana Jones, is not a high concept story, but it has a pretty unique setting and unique characters, but it is still existing in more or less a world that we understand. And it has its own story rules, right? Especially in like Temple of Doom, where we've got like these mystics running around and we've got this whole sort of cultic religion going on and all of that. And so it's, there is a certain level of blending where you could say how, like there's almost like the spectrum of like quote unquote low concept to high concept of how far in this direction do my story rules go before it stops being low concept and starts being, it's like, I wouldn't even worry about getting into all of that detail. It doesn't matter, right? That's for the analyzers to figure out. But from a practical sense, your story rules will define your concept. They will define what sort of things can and cannot happen in your story world, which is important to understand as you are getting closer to that final version, or as you're continuing to develop that story, you want to, at some point, figure out very clearly what your story rules are. Because sometimes you might know them immediately, and you might say, okay, my story rules are going to have the Force in them, right? I'm making Star Wars, so I'm going to have the Force, and I'm going to have lightsabers, and I'm going to have droids that are able to function and these kinds of things. And these are going to be all part of my story rules. So I need to establish them in the story fairly early on so that I can use those ideas over and over again. And the audience is not going to be confused when somebody is force pushing another person and this sort of thing. Corey Pryor asks, would Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind have rules? Yeah, absolutely. So in Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, they are also, I believe they're also going into people's memories, right? And so they literally have the machines that go into people's minds. And so that's something you also see a lot, which is a high concept story has some sort of story object that is unique to that particular story's world. And so like a lightsaber, for example, is a story object that is part of the story rules of Star Wars, and it is a unique object that makes that particular story more interesting. Let me see if I can find this. Spotless Mind. Let's like device. Yeah. So they have, it's the mind eraser device. Let me yeah, I mean, so this is a quick kind of shot of it, right? So Jim Carrey wears this device in the film, and this device is wiping his mind, right, of the painful memories that he doesn't want to remember of his previous relationship. And so that device then becomes a story object that is attached to very important story rules. Corey says that the Matrix has tons of rules unique to the world. Yes, the Matrix is definitely a high concept story where the entire story sort of world is involved. So, and that's another way that you can think about breaking this up, where you have, so if you have your concept, and then you can have your characters and your setting, and then you can have story rules that affect just an individual character. That would be something like Liar Liar, right? Or you can have story rules that affect all of your characters and the setting, right? That would be something like The Matrix, where like literally the name of the film is the setting that has massive story rules that wildly affect how the story works, right? The Matrix is the computer program they're all living inside of that has all sorts of rules and things that are going on. And so you can, like, this is why understanding this idea of story rules is so important for understanding what your concept is. In the same way that a chess game, the fundamental way that a chess game is played is through the rules, understanding how the chess pieces work. The characters in the setting don't function well if you don't understand that the story rules are actually building out the entire, it is the glue of the entire concept. And that can be something that's simple, or that can be something that is big. Nisha asks, is the butterfly effect also an example of this? Yes. That is another high concept story where they are taking one idea of small things have massive impact, and they're using that story rule to take us on this long journey. What? Open it. So I just checking my computer. My fans are getting so loud. Laporta asks, so Hunger Games would be high concept. It definitely has a high concept story setting, for sure. So the characters themselves don't necessarily have like superhuman abilities. However, like what I discussed, is that they have power, skills, and tools, right? So in the Hunger Games, Katniss has the skill of using the bow, for example, right? That's her big skill. PETA, he has his particular skills, and so those things matter for how the story actually plays out. And so, yes, I would say that it is a high concept story in its setting, particularly. Not as much in its characters, but definitely in its setting. For example, with Star Wars has characters that have superhuman abilities, right? They have the Force. They have different versions of how the Force works, right? The Sith are able to use the lightning and use the chokes and other things. And the Jedi have their elements of Force. And so that would be rules that are applying to the characters as well as the setting, versus the Hunger Games, which is more specifically with the setting and less so with characters that have superhuman abilities. And so again, right, it's this spectrum of different ways that you can mix and match story rules in different ways to make your concept more or less unique. All right, that is essentially what I wanted to start and share with you guys today. And then I'm going to open it up to some questions here shortly. First, I want to see if there's any final questions about this idea. Talking about concept, high concept, low concept, talking about story rules. If you guys have questions specifically about that, I would be interested. Have I heard of the Don Simpson high concept script? I have not, Spencer. Wow, it is really starting to rain outside. Very different from this, but he was a coke snorting 80s producer, so he probably had some different views. Here, let me shut my window. The rain is like really kicking up. This is what I get living back in the South again. I get torrential downpours of rain. All right. I'm going to go ahead and go to the Discord and answer some questions. If you're not in the Discord, links are below to join the Discord, and you can come in and hop on the stream and ask me a question directly. Let's go to Spencer. Hey,
Hello,
Spencer.
can you hear me?
I sure can. How are you?
Sweet. I'm good. So I guess speaking of kind of more high concept stuff, the story that I'm kind of developing right now is, I guess, a little bit of a genre bending thing, and there's a little bit of a high concept elements, but just kind of I was more curious about, so when you come up with a story idea, it's kind of like a frontier where it's like there's a lot of different like things it can be about.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm kind of two things I'm kind of struggling with really progressing forward. Is what do I make like the central theme? Like, what is it about? Which seems like the most important thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then kind of off of that is other characters. Like, I have a protagonist, I have an antagonist, I have like a setup for that conflict, and where I kind of want it to go. But then, you can't really have you can do a two-person story, but when you have a Western and there's only two characters, it doesn't really work.
Yeah. Okay. So right now you are in, what phase are you in? Are you in drafting? Are you in the outline? Are you in the idea phase? Where are you at?
I feel like I'm kind of on the border of outlining and drafting.
Okay.
Like I've just written out scenes for fun, just to kind of, you know, exercise what the voice of characters might be, what the I don't know, just kind of exercising that muscle of writing.
For sure.
Uh, but I don't know. I guess I'll like the premise of the story is as follows. So it's a werewolf western, which sounds silly, but I do think that it could be kind of interesting. I've been watching a lot of like old westerns, like John Ford ones,
Hmm.
and I just kind of noticed that even like some of those, but then ones that aren't as like acclaimed or well known. There's stuff like the Oxbow incident or Winchester 73. They kind of work like little like morality fables,
Mm.
almost like not too dissimilar from like a Twilight Zone episode.
Yeah.
Um, and then also similar to that would also kind of be like the Universal monster movies, where it's like very basic. You got a guy, he's kind of got like one fatal flaw, and then he like there's a monster or he's a monster or whatever.
For sure.
Um, and it also kind of feels like a fable or a morality tale of some kind. So I kind of saw that there was some overlap between like the Wolfman werewolf story and then the kind of like a lot of westerns
Yeah,
of
I
the
think
time
that's
as well.
cool. I mean, werewolf western just by itself sounds like fun to me.
Yeah,
Because I think it's like
I think
you're. I like the idea of adding mythological elements to a western setting. That to me just sounds cool.
well, thank you. Yeah, no, I mean, because kind of the thought behind it is that the West is sort of the American mythology, and if you take
Totally,
like other mythologies and kind of weave it in, I think it's actually a really interesting setting for that kind of stuff.
for sure. So, talk to
So
me about these two characters. You said that you only have two characters. Is that like man versus this werewolf, or are you seeing this more as like a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde story?
I mean, it would be more of the first thing, man versus this werewolf, but kind of I do have like a list of movies that I'm kind of trying to draw from. Where I really like in Sicario, where it's like there's two kinds of people in the world. There's wolves and there's sheep.
Mm.
And I kind of thought like the first seed was like I think I heard you talking about that. You were just like explaining Sicario, and I'm like, yeah, well, what if the wolf was like an actual wolf? And but then more so than that, I kind of started looking into Native American culture in the American Southwest, and like the Navajo tribe were sheep people. Like they were sheep herders.
Hmm.
Sheep as a commodity was a symbol of status. Sheep wool blankets were a common trade for them. And if you had more sheep, then you had more like you were a better Navajo.
Interesting.
But I do think that around the 1860s is where you get a lot of change in American history, especially in the frontier,
Totally.
where it's the Civil War ends, the railroads being built. There's a lot of displacement happening. I think I forget what happened first, the Trail of Tears or the Long Walk of the Navajo, but they happened around the same time, and I'm sure there must have been some overlap. Uh, but one of the things I love about watching specifically John Ford's westerns is he fell in love with shooting in Monument Valley, and I just love the way that place looks. And I kind of just started
Hmm.
studying the land, and that is now it's been there's a Navajo reservation on it. Uh, that's where silver was mined in a lot of its original kind of silver mining sites.
Hmm.
And so, anyways, so the conflict, the characters I have. So you have so in the 1860s, the Navajo have been displaced. They've essentially lost like the American Indian Wars are essentially kind of in the dying days, at least for the Navajo. And you have this young Navajo man who's like coming of age, and he wants to be a great warrior. His name is Natan Inez, which translates to tall leader. Um, and yet he sees that like he wants to be a great man, but he looks at his tribe and they're all just kind of licking their wounds and kind of like, oh well, I guess
Mm.
we lost.
Right.
And
Right.
he's like, well, and he sees a cowboy and he's like, I want to be him. He's a warrior. Um, so he actually leaves the land that he actually kind of goes back to the like to Monument Valley to the land of the Navajo, but from his point of view as an American. If you can't beat him, join him.
Hmm.
He's a Native American who believes in like the U.S. like the American dream in a way, and I think that's an interesting irony. I think that young people, they want, they're ambitious, and there is kind of a more selfish avenue. They want something good for them,
Yeah.
even if they don't really grasp really their identity and how that identity fits into a larger puzzle.
Right.
So I have this young guy, Natani Nez, and he's an Indian gunfighter, and uh, he wanders into a town. It was illegal for Native Americans to like drink and own guns, so he goes into a bar and wants to like kind of prove himself. So he starts drinking, and then like some, I don't know, like some tough guys start like egging him on. He gets into he's about to get into a gunfight, but then the town marshal intervenes, arrests him. And this is, I guess, where you would get some like the backstory where he's explaining to the marshal like what he believes, kind of, he doesn't want to be a Navajo, he wants to be an American.
Mm-hmm.
And so the marshal, he's like, well, like, look, you're Native American, you were drinking and you had a gun. I had to arrest you. But like, he's like, but Glendon, he's the marshal. He fought in the Civil War. He was like a Union lieutenant colonel. He was part of the cavalry. Now he's a marshal, and he's getting older, and he wants to transition out of being uh, uh, he wants to transition out of like military and kind of become more of a businessman.
Mm-hmm.
And also around the 1860s is when people were starting to go to California to mine gold.
Mm-hmm.
And he's sort of like, well, we have silver here. Why do I need to go to California for gold if I can get silver here? So, he takes up Navajo Boy to be kind of his protege, but then through happenstance, it's revealed that Glendon is a werewolf.
What do you mean
And
through happenstance?
sorry, not sorry. Okay, I should not say happenstance. It's revealed that he is a werewolf, and that he's a bad dude. He likes being a werewolf. He likes killing people. And kind of what's interesting about U.S. Marshals is that they were actually kind of nomadic. They would travel from town to town in a region instead of just being the sheriff of a town.
Okay.
But so I think that there's an interesting cycle there where, you know, he's in a town for a couple of weeks, then he's in another town for a couple of weeks, and then if there's like if
And
he
he's the
like
sheriff?
can't, well, yeah, marshal, but
Okay. Oh,
and so
okay.
he's
So
like
that's how he's able to move around.
yeah, he's able to move around and kind of kill who he wants, and so I know that, and so you do have this like false mentor figure. I think of like the movie Training Day. That's kind of where I'd want to pull from the whole master and apprentice or mentor student dynamic.
Okay.
And then there's a heel turn where uh, the student has to kill the mentor. And then the irony is, of course, he's mining silver, and silver bullets kill werewolves.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I'm just trying to populate this town, or at least this region, with more interesting characters, because in both westerns and in werewolves, there's always a love interest. In werewolves, it's almost always tied to the tragedy. I don't know if I want to make the main character become a werewolf at some point. That's also kind of a staple of that genre or story.
Mm-hmm.
But at that point, I don't know if I can just move into something beyond just following what the archetypal kind of common denominator of the two genres would be.
Right.
But I do
Yeah.
think that you could have like ex-Confederates who then moved west and were homesteaders, and there can be some animus just because you have, a former Union lieutenant wanting to, like, he has some kind of unfinished business there.
Okay.
I don't
Well,
know.
yeah.
Have you ever seen?
What I was gonna say is the biggest thing I'm hearing that you need is this other antagonistic force that this werewolf marshal and our main character, his sidekick, the Navajo, can actually kind of be going after, so that we have some sort of dynamic of this third party that's pushing against, or that we're going after. And then you could get through that, we could potentially learn that this marshal is a werewolf, and through that we can actually get into questions about this man and how he works and what is it that you want to say kind of philosophically, which I'm not sure yet. But I think it's important that you have this kind of third party antagonist, right? Whether you want to make that, you said like, ex-Confederates or sort of post-war Confederates, something like that. Sure. But I think we need that other party because that's going to create the conflict to then separate our Navajo character and this werewolf U.S. Marshal to have them have a development within their character, for the Navajo to see him as the werewolf, and for him to sort of say what, for this Marshal to have his perspective brought forth, right? So if he's sort of violent or he shreds these Confederates or something like that, through him, like you making the werewolf the Marshal, I think that concept is where you can find what it is you're trying to say here, right? If you really want him to be both a werewolf and also a symbol of the law. Now, you also mentioned that you want him to kind of be this cowboy and that the Navajo sees him as this cowboy. And so when you said that, my first thought was that this was going to be a story about this Navajo who meets this lone bandit cowboy who is also a werewolf and he is an outlaw. But you making him a Marshal also comes with all this symbolism and all this philosophical standpoint with that character. So I think it's going to be important to decide if you want him to be that Marshal, that's coming with all of this philosophical baggage with it. Therefore, you are telling a story through the lens of him being a lawman. Or you go the other direction where he is a cowboy, right? He's an outlaw. And then you have this Navajo who is from a defeated tribe but doesn't want to be defeated himself, who gets with this sort of outlaw werewolf cowboy person who also is living this life of, I don't want to be defeated, I am my own warrior, this kind of thing. And now you can kind of make these claims and take it from the perspective of these two lone warriors without a tribe and without a nationality, who are now, you can have their discussion about what it means to be that lone warrior. So I think the fact that you're making that werewolf a Marshal is going to have big consequences for how the story is going to play out.
Yeah, I agree. Well, kind of on that, I'm just thinking about how you said it. Like, what if, because in a way, like you could, I'm sure a lot of Lost Cause ex-Confederates were like, saw themselves as, a defeated tribe that didn't want to see themselves as defeated. So you could draw a parallel to where, okay, this just came to me. What if, like, there is a site where silver is like there's a part of land where there's silver, or at least they think there's silver.
Mm-hmm.
However, there's a homestead built by a couple of, like, it's an ex-Confederate family, and so the Marshal, ex-lieutenant, whatever, the werewolf, he has an interest of displacing these people from their homestead so he can get to their land.
Mm-hmm.
And he, like, I don't know how I would get there yet, but kind of when he attacks their homestead, that's when maybe our main guy, the Navajo, can see him go full wolf, and at that point realize that he can't follow him there. He kind of sees him as his own savage.
That would be interesting. I also feel like maybe you make your Confederate, or you make your werewolf a Confederate, in the sense of, like, it's possible, like, I guess it just heavily depends on whether or not you want him to be in that position of being an outlaw or not, right?
Okay.
Because, if you do want to make him in that position of being an outlaw, that's going to have ramifications on what's happening in the story. Because I think there's a lot, like, when you were talking about the conventions here and the tropes of the genre, and when we're looking at that, it's like, I feel like the werewolf is this kind of lone wolf sort of thing. And if that's the case, then it might make more sense for him to be in line with being ostracized or being being this outlaw. And then that's part of why this Navajo is attracted to this person. Because I guess from my perspective, I'm like, would it really make sense for... Because you're like, okay, this Navajo, they're not allowed to own guns, not allowed to drink, this sort of stuff. So then why would he have this affinity for this U.S. Marshal? It seems to me like the story might be more interesting if you are talking about these two characters that are essentially both from defeated tribes, right? You've got this defeated Confederate werewolf who's from that, right? And you have this Navajo who's defeated, and now they together, maybe they're fighting the law, right? Maybe they are cowboys, because that's what you are. Wait a minute. Is there an issue with the stream, Thomas? What the heck? Hold on. Are we good? Are we not good? Let me see. It says I'm still live. Guys in the Discord, give me a thumbs up in the Discord if the stream is still all good. Or people in the YouTube chat, if you guys could let me know if this stream is still good. I'm not sure what might be the issue. All good? Excellent. Thanks, guys. But yeah, I think... Thank you, guys. Spencer, Thomas, Josh, Wondrian, thank you, guys. Stevenson, awesome. Okay. Yeah, I think that would really align more with the pieces that you've got.
I see. So that's definitely something interesting to consider, because it could be then, like, to me, like, it makes more sense where if somebody's an outlaw and maybe he's an older outlaw and he kind of just wants to live the rest of his life with some sort of comfort by, like, becoming like a silver baron or something. It makes more sense why he would just go out of his way to, for instance, like, attack a piece of land or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, like, if he's a werewolf, he himself is this powerful entity that, like, let's say could take down a whole score of men, right? So, like, he might be able to himself take down, like, 8 Union, cavalry by himself because he's this werewolf, yet he is without a tribe now. So it doesn't matter how many, officers of the law he might fight, he's still without that. Like, the Confederacy is gone, right? And so, and if you did it that way, to me, I feel like you could have this interest, like, now this character kind of has this interesting argument, and maybe you are using, in the same way in Seven, the film Seven, where Morgan Freeman's character, he is very apathetic and very disgusted at the city that he is in, and he's being a detective in this city where things are not good. And then he meets this serial killer. They are looking for a serial killer who agrees with him and yet is way farther along in his worldview. And through that detective's dealings with this serial killer, he realizes that, oh, wow, this is not where I want to end up, or something like that. And then you could make it, now this Navajo is able to kind of see a more extreme version of his worldview through that, is one way you could take it. I don't want to rewrite your whole story, but that could be an interesting way.
I think that's a very interesting kind of way and avenue, because I hate to always bring this back to John Ford, but I watched, in the last month, I watched The Searchers like 4 times, and something that interests me about that is that is a similar dynamic, because John Wayne's character in that is a ex-Confederate who never surrendered, and he doesn't really have a place to go that's home. He returns to his brother's homestead, but then when that's, like, raided by the Comanche, he then goes on, like, this path of vengeance, and it's like a 5-year story. And kind of over those 5 years, everyone moves on except for him and the foster kid of his brother, because, like, they're traveling together. And and kind of over the course of that story, you see Jeffrey Hunter's character, who's like his sidekick, where it almost becomes too late for him, where he's kind of becoming like John Wayne's character, where there is no home for him. But then the story kind of resolves before he's able to really come there. Whereas, like, where he does earn the respect of John Wayne's character, but he kind of by the end doesn't really want that respect because
Right.
he no longer sees him as he sees the kind of the holes in the way he views the world.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I like that. No, this is definitely something to think on. And then, as far as just other characters to fill out this cast, I don't know. I'm just trying to think about like I feel like I like my protagonist. The antagonist, I want to consider what you've said, but I quite like it. But just for like at least two others for like a four corner opposition,
Mm-hmm.
I'm just trying to think. Maybe there is a martial character.
Yeah.
Um,
I think there should be. I mean, there needs to be. I think you could have. I mean, you definitely need some sort of symbol of the law that won, right?
mhm.
Like if you're telling this story that's kind of Navajo Confederate Union, definitely we have some sort of the law that won, and maybe your fourth point of opposition is some sort of like you were talking about, like a silver mine owner or a landowner of some kind, where um, where that's they are the kind of like they want to do their business, or they want to have their land. They would prefer not, but they are just in the way of these different sort of energies, right? Of the fallen Confederates and the current Union and the Navajo, right? And they're in the middle of this soup.
Right. Awesome. I mean, I think that answers my question for now.
Cool.
That's very insightful. Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks for hopping on today, Spencer.
Absolutely.
All right. Guys, if you're experiencing a little bit of buffering on the live stream, I think the storm is kind of screwing with my internet connection a little bit, and I do apologize for that. But it's just kind of going to be what it is. It is what it is today. I'll try to fix it off stream. But if you guys are able to hear the stream enough in the YouTube chat, give me a thumbs up if you can. And I'm going to keep moving on here to our next person. I need help. I need Hellpop. I need Hellpop. How do I say that? How do you want me to say that?
Doesn't matter.
How do you say it?
To be completely honest, I think this is the name that the Discord app chose.
Okay. What's going on, man?
Anyway,
What's your question?
Oh, thanks. Listen, I've been writing for a while now. To be exactly, I started writing when I was 18. I'm now 21. I feel like my writing's improved, but I definitely got a lot of work ahead of me.
Sure.
But one of the questions I really wanted to ask you was a few weeks ago I saw this YouTube channel called Behind the Curtain, and
Mhm.
it talks about how the writers of shows, well, it's self-explanatory. But anyway, I was watching the Breaking Bad one, and something that really caught my attention was that the writers constantly asked, where's Walter's head at? Where's Jesse's head at? Because
Mhm.
they don't they write scene by scene, and depending on how the character reacts and what he will naturally do, that would determine the plot and other choices he would make. Here's my question. I never felt like the characters were writing through me. I always had like a third point of view as I was writing. I don't know if that makes sense, but what I'm trying to do is trying to find a way for, I want my script to basically write itself. So how do you know your character's, psychology so well with that the script and whatever scene you're writing is basically writing itself? It's not me writing it; it's the characters writing it. Does that make sense?
Yes. So this idea of your characters writing the story for you. So first, you don't get to that point unless you have written on those particular characters a lot, right? So they did not come into the pilot episode 1 of Breaking Bad with this full sense of, oh, the characters are just writing the story for me and I don't have to think at all and all of this. Like, you have to write on those characters a lot. So if you are writing a TV series or you're writing a feature or whatever it is, and it's the first time you're writing that, you will probably write at least an entire first draft before you really get a feel for how the characters are exactly talking. And so you are not going to flip this switch and suddenly the characters are writing the story for you. Also, to get to a point where the story feels like it's writing itself, all that really means is that that means two things. It means that you are being present in the writing process where you are not constantly in your own mind analyzing every single thing you're putting down on the page, but you are just allowing yourself to write the story without criticizing yourself and without inhibition. And two, it also means that you have worked and developed the skill of scene writing so that you understand what the choices in that scene, you understand the function of the scene, you understand what it means to actually write a scene. And the way that you do that is by writing a lot of scenes. And therefore that skill becomes naturally integrated into who you are. And now you are able to write in a more organic fashion. But if you think that you are just going to sit down and suddenly the characters are going to write the story for you, it's not going to happen.
I'm sorry.
Is my internet cutting in and out?
Oh yeah, yeah. For a while, I think I lost you.
You lost me?
Could you repeat that? I'm sorry.
The short repeated version is, you need to both write your characters a lot and have an understanding of the skill of scene writing and the sense of writing a lot of scenes, writing scenes with a lot of scene choices and doing that over and over again before you're going to get into this state of presence where you're able to write without thinking, right? Where you're able to sort of have the story write itself. You're never truly getting to a point where the story is just totally writing itself. If you ask me, I kind of think that's BS. Like, what that really means is just you are present in the story and you are having an enjoyable time writing the story. It doesn't mean that you are never not pushing the story forward. Like, you are pushing the story forward. You do have to actually do that work. But it becomes easier when you write a lot of scenes and get the skill of scene writing. And two, when you write those characters a lot. So for example, if you write a draft 3 of these characters in that story, you are going to feel the character voices way more than in a draft 1. But if you think you're going to sit down and scene 3 of the first draft have a feel for these characters, it's just not going to happen.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Cool.
Oh, and my last question was, how do you find those? How do you find that philosophical conflict or that theme that you're really passionate about? That because I heard that Michael Arndt only wrote Little Miss Sunshine because he felt really passionate about telling this theme, this philosophical idea about what's more important, winning or trying to win. So how do I personally find the theme that really speaks to me? Are there any exercises I can do to
Sure. Well, I think a lot of that is about analyzing your own life, being aware of your own life, thinking about what has happened to you, thinking about do you have views on life that are important to you? Or have there been struggles you have gone through that have taught you important lessons that changed who you were as a person? That's really what is going to define your ability to write in a philosophical and thematic manner. And that doesn't happen all at once. And you mentioned that you're young, and so the more you live life, the clearer those themes will become for you, and the more crazy stuff is going to happen to you in your life, and it will give you more to write about. But a lot of that writing from that philosophical standpoint and writing towards a good theme is being aware of what the events in your own life mean to you, how they have shaped you as a person, how they have shaped your identity.
Thanks, man. That was incredibly insightful. I appreciate it.
For sure. Thanks for hopping on today.
Have a good day.
All right. Guys, I'm seeing on my stream, it's giving me like the red square of death, which means my upload speed is just bad right now. I'm just going to keep running. I don't know how good the stream is. It might be terrible right now. If it is, I apologize. I will be taking a look at it off stream. But I'm just going to keep rolling here. So let's go to who was next. I think it was, I can't even see. I think it was Stevenson. All right, let's have Stevenson hop in. Will Stevenson's mic work today? Time will tell. Currently still muted. We will see. Oh, wait. You can hear him? Oh wait. Oh, I've got him muted. Oops. Whoops.
Oh my.
What have you muted? You must have been doing something stupid last time. I'm blaming this on you still, even though it was totally my fault.
Yo, man, wait a minute. Yesterday, I was like, what the frick is wrong with my headphones set? Because I was checking Discord and everything. I was like, I thought there was something wrong on my end. And then some people said in the Discord chat.
Whoops.
They said in the Discord chat that some could hear me, then some could hear me, but I was like going in and out. I was like, dang it. And then I fixed the problem, but then I didn't get the chance to speak yesterday, so I didn't know if I fixed my mic today. And then here now, I was like, my mic is still wrong. I was like, man, this is a BS right now.
Whoops.
What the freak?
Whoops. Well, we're here now. What's your question? Hey, I'm a one-man show here. I'm a one-man show. You know, I'm figuring it out here. What's your question?
We do it live. Okay. Okay. Well. Shoot. Okay. My questions have to revolve around philosophical conflicts.
Okay.
Okay. Sometimes I'm having like some difficult times trying to like define exactly what the philosophical conflict is, like in my story or with like my characters.
Sure. And
trying to find like a good and brief way to describe the conflict.
Okay.
For example, like just to give you an example, let me see. I have some notes here.
Okay.
Okay. The philosophical conflict in Whiplash is greatness versus normacy, correct?
Yes.
And the viewpoint for the greatness viewpoint conflict is that greatness is more valuable than a normal life, no matter the sacrifice. And the viewpoint for normalcy is that a normal life is beautiful and worth living, and that greatness isn't worth it if it means that you must suffer greatly.
Yeah. I think that's a good summary.
Exactly. I have a hard time trying to figure out the exact philosophical conflict in my story and trying
Sure.
to give a good but brief summary of the viewpoints in those conflicts.
Sure.
For example, right now, and also I also having a problem trying to find like the opposite, for like an opposite conflict for the opposing side. For example, I have a character. I'm still, I still trying to it's still a work in progress. I have a villain who basically he believes that peace is detrimental to human evolution, and
Okay.
that hardship is a necessary part or component for mankind's evolution. He believes that without hardships, humanity will become stagnant and eventually become extinct.
Okay.
And he also believes that those who are unable to overcome adversity in life are weak, and that they must be called for the greater good. And that's his
Okay.
belief. His want is he wants to create a stronger society that will forever grow in power by inflicting great suffering upon humanity in order to force in order to force them to evolve and become stronger.
Okay. That sounds pretty clear to
Now,
me.
now I don't necessarily I can't figure out the need for this villain.
That's fine. I wouldn't worry about that right now. What's the opposing viewpoint? So viewpoint one here, your antagonist viewpoint.
Mhm.
Antagonist viewpoint one is essentially human evolution requires adversity.
Now see right there, that's it. But what's like the proper term to like sum that up? I having problems trying to figure that out.
So I understand your question because you're trying to get it as simple as the whole greatness versus normalcy that you see in Whiplash, right? And
Yeah,
I
yeah.
understand the desire to get it that clean, right? Because Whiplash is very
Mhm.
clear, like great. Maybe it comes to you later, but you don't necessarily have to distill it down into one word. Like you can if you like, but ultimately you are clear enough to where this is useful to you in the story, right? Because what we're trying to do is we're not trying to, like, the ultimate goal when we're writing a story is to write the screenplay or write the story. It is not to get the most perfect vision of the terms for your documents. Now, you might, as you continue to work on and develop the story, it might come to you in a moment and say like, oh wow, this is the one word summation of the antagonist's point of view. And if you find that, great. But it doesn't necessarily have to be that. And I would say like if you have it this simple, like that it's down to a sentence, that is enough for you to make it useful to in the story.
Okay, because I was like, I'm going through like multiple movies and like finding the conflict in the
Mm-hmm.
movies. For example, in that Rick and Morty episode that you use a lot
Mm-hmm.
for like examples, conflict in that is moral absolutism versus moral relativism.
Relativism, yeah.
Yeah, The Dark Knight, it's order versus chaos. In Shawshank Redemption, it's hope versus despair. Lord of the Rings is overwhelming evil versus underdog good. So I was like, will all these stories have like simple terms to find the conflicts in the story? I was trying to like really focus on trying to get that right.
So yes and no. So I think with like the Dark Knight, for example, you could describe it as simply as order versus chaos, but you could also make the argument that it is more complicated than that, in the sense that the Joker is fighting against a false system of justice that he believes is not fair or not legitimate or not what it is portrayed to be. And then therefore you would say that it's like a sort of this like dark justice or this sort of corrupt justice system versus this character that is coming in to challenge that corrupt justice system and to poke holes into it. So I think in your case right now, it is more interesting to I want to understand what your viewpoint 2 is. I'm less interested in distilling viewpoint 1 down to a single word and more interested in understanding what is this second viewpoint. Do you know?
Okay, see, that's one of the other things I'm struggling with.
Mm-hmm.
because the thing about the villain's viewpoint is that his viewpoint is true to a certain extent. Because in life, everybody's going to go through hardships, adversities, some greater than others. And if they are able to overcome those adversities, they'll come out better than they were before. They'll come out stronger, and they'll be able to discover more about themselves, what they can handle, what they are capable of, etc. But the thing is that, like, the villain he's a extremist, and he is orchestrating these hardships on everybody else. And again, he's forcing everyone to go through adversity. But I'm trying to figure out how to make.
So he is bringing what he believes is the necessary adversity. He's actually bringing the adversity. He's not sort of allowing it to naturally come or doing it in a loving way. So this way, if you were to say, like, this is your antagonist, like a mentor perspective on this idea of like human evolution requires adversity, I think you would find people that find, let's say, a mentor character that agrees with that, right? That yes, human evolution does require adversity, but the mentor might be doing that from a place of instruction or a place of love. So the motivation is from this place of instruction or place of love or desire to strengthen, versus the antagonist who might be doing this from, like, what is the ultimate motivation for the antagonist to do what they are doing? Are they doing this from a place of hate? Are they doing this from a place of anger? Because the motivation could actually be the thing that is splitting your two viewpoints, because this feels like something that both sides might agree on, but then it's the motivation behind that changes it, and then there's going to be a belief that's essentially under that motivation that might be the real split in your story. And this is where a story can get complex, because our beliefs are complex, because you must pull back the layers of your own mind and to create and understand the layers of a character's mind. So let me ask you that. From this motivational side, what is the antagonist's motivation for holding this belief and bringing this adversity to the people in the story?
Well, you see, the thing this character, he's kind of like, I have an idea, but I have two ideas. One, he has an origin. I'll briefly explain that in a minute. But the other option is that he's kind of like the Joker, in which, the Joker doesn't have, in the Dark Knight, you don't know his origin. He's like an embodiment of chaos, and he has a belief and a statement about human nature, and he wants to prove his point by through Gotham. So my first option was that he sees himself as, I don't know the proper term, but he sees himself as like an agent of evolution, you could say. He believes that what he's doing must be done in order to save humanity. Because in my story, like the setting is in peacetime. Everything, it's no conflict. Everything's peaceful. And for the villain, he believes that peace is detrimental. He believes that eventually humans will become stagnant and excuse me, and become extinct as a result of their era of their age of peace. So he also believes that those that can't overcome adversity are weak, and that their weakness could affect those who are strong.
So
and he believes that. Oh, sorry.
I think what's happening here, and what we need to figure out, is your character is projecting something outward to others that is ultimately a mirror of themselves, right?
Yes.
So we have this antagonist who is saying that humans are weak and adversity must be brought to them so that they can grow. What that is that is a projection. He is essentially describing himself through doing that. So I think what you need to understand, which is kind of getting into this motivation and understanding what happened to this character. What was it about his, like, sort of what is his own weakness? Or, his own weakness that he does not want to admit? Or how was he harmed in the past? Maybe how was he abused in the past? Why is he carrying this pain and then taking that pain and then projecting it out onto the humanity that is in front of him? And through that, I think you will start to find, because you were also asking, I don't know what this antagonist needs, right? Well, his need is going to be connected to his most important emotional relationship, right? And so what may be the case is that this character had something happen in their past that showed them their own weakness, or they were abused for being weak, or something horrible happened to them and they were not able to save people that they loved because they were not strong enough. And now this created a need. This created a pain within them. And now they are projecting that pain back onto the people in the story. And that is where we meet them. And so I think to create the depth of this character and to understand their motivation, I think you need to get into their ghost. What happened to them in the past? How were they harmed? How was someone that they cared about harmed in a way where they were not able to protect them?
Well, okay, I got you. Completely understand. That goes into my second option, which I do have a origin for this character, but it's all a work in progress. So it's not fleshed out. But like I said, like in my story, the setting is in peacetime. But before that, the setting, it was in chaos. There's wars, just conflict everywhere. And this villain, he grew up in those times, and he survived, and he endured those times, and he survived. And I forgot to mention. I forgot to mention something. One more thing.
Sure.
In my story, humanity have powers, superhuman abilities, but humanity don't know this because the powers lie dormant within them, and it requires a certain trigger in order to awaken these powers. Okay. But that said, the main villain in the age of conflict, while he was enduring and surviving, these wars, etc., the trauma and what's the word? Basically, the adversities that he was enduring triggered his abilities, and that's what awakened his abilities. And by awakening these abilities, he became powerful, more stronger, and he was able to defend himself.
So it seems like he believes the truth then. It seems like you're building an antagonist that is just correct.
Yes. In a way, yes. But the thing is that
Well, not in a
he
way,
goes
just
to
in the world of the story, he is objectively correct.
yes, okay, exactly, yes. But he does go to an extreme with it. So I'm trying to figure out how to.
He doesn't.
It's like a balancing act.
Well, this is the thing: he doesn't believe a lie. He believes the truth.
Okay.
And that might be fine, but I guess that's what you need to decide, right? Like, is the belief of this antagonist a lie that he is holding, or does he have the truth, and now you are simply creating a protagonist that must beat this character and must go through this point of adversity, but this antagonist is correct, he's holding the truth, and then maybe your protagonist is the one with the lie, in the sense that now the protagonist must realize that, oh wow, like through the course of fighting and destroying and beating this antagonist, he does awaken his own powers and realizes, like, you know, oh wow, this guy was kind of right the whole time. And then you would be figuring out what is your protagonist's lie, or what is that other point of view with it. You know, so the direct opposite of human evolution requires adversity would be like, you know, humans don't need adversity, right? Like that would be the direct opposite view. And then your question might be, well, okay, is that the lie that your protagonist believes? Does he believe that this person, you know, is just wrong in his thinking? And then through the story, he realizes the antagonist is right. Because right now, based on this, because this goes back into how important your external story world is tied into the philosophical conflict that's happening. Because if you set up in your external story world that the antagonist, that there are dormant powers in humanity that can only be awoken by adversity, you are therefore saying on a philosophical level, because of the external story rules, that your antagonist is correct.
Yes, okay, I got you. Exactly. Okay, absolutely true. And that was the thing I was struggling with the hero, because for the main character, in the world that they're in, they have warriors. They don't know they have powers yet, but they have warriors that come out during times of conflict to protect the peace if conflict arises. But and that would be the main antagonist. But the main antagonist holds the truth, but he goes to extreme lengths. And I went to Discord chat. Thomas, I think. I hope I ain't messed up your name. He says that maybe the antagonist holds the truth to the extreme where it becomes a lie. Would that be true?
It could be true, but then you have to define what his lie is, right? Like what actually. Like, what is it about? Because it seems like in your story, when humans are put through extreme pain, they unlock their internal powers. And so it seems like him being extreme is still just part of the concept story world, and it still means that he's true. It still means that he's correct. There's nothing about his extremities that are making it a lie, according to your story world.
Well, okay, the slight difference is that it's not just experiencing hardship, but you have to experience and overcome it. Because, you know, people in real life, when they experience hardships, they can either succumb to it, or they can overcome it and become stronger. By overcoming the hardships is where a person's powers can be discovered. If a person, you know, succumbs to the hardship, or they are unable to overcome it, then they will either die, or they just fail to unlock their ability.
So then his line might be that those who die through the hardship should be dead and are worthless, something like that.
So that's his belief,
right?
Well, yeah, I did. Yeah, I said that. Yeah, I did say that.
Okay,
yeah.
so then they're right. Okay, so that is his lie then, is what I'm saying.
Okay, gotcha.
And so yeah, I mean, you could run with that. I'm not totally sure what your other side is. I mean, maybe
That's what I'm struggling with.
yeah. I mean, you have kind of a
That's-
weird story here because it's like you have this antagonist that's like kind of right, but not. It's like a weird. I'll be honest. I'm not in love with this philosophical sort of dilemma here. Like you have an antagonist that's putting a lot of pressure on your characters. It still is fairly, kind of just what we see in a story, like kind of just from the external standpoint of an antagonist putting pressure on the other side and believing that putting pressure on them is beneficial. And I think it's a start. I'm not sure, like maybe you just focus in from because like we've talked the whole time about your antagonist. Maybe you focus in more about your protagonist and think about like, okay, what are the kind of choices that they're going to have to deal with as they're fighting this antagonist? Because again, it's not like it's very clear that, okay, they just need to fight this antagonist and win, right? That seems pretty clear. If you look at something like Snowpiercer, it's clear that they need to fight the antagonist all the way until they actually get to the front of the train. And then Curtis is standing in front of Wilford, the main antagonist, and Wilford is saying, hey, your path in life is not to beat me, but to take over my position. That is why you were saved. That's why you made it all the way here. This is what you need to do. And he actually offers him this interesting choice. Or in Star Wars, right? Darth Vader tells Luke, he says, join me and together we can rule the galaxy as father and son. He's saying like, listen, there is something more going on than just us fighting. And I guess that's my question here is, does your protagonist get challenged in that way? If you look at Whiplash, which was the example that you brought up initially, Whiplash is the main antagonist pushing the protagonist in a way. So it's that, which is kind of interesting, is that like you almost have a Whiplash, but in a different setting here, right? Where you're talking about human evolution acquires adversity. That's essentially greatness. So maybe this other thing where I was like, humans don't need adversity, maybe that really is just normalcy, and you have a Whiplash greatness versus normalcy in a different kind of context.
So like ordinary versus extraordinary?
Yeah. So it's like you have like an ordinary life versus a like life of extreme adversity.
Okay. Because the thing is that's like my biggest problem, trying to figure out the beliefs of the hero, of the main character, and trying to figure out the other side of the philosophical conflict.
Well, if you roll with this like it's Whiplash, but in a different context, the protagonist and antagonist share the same view, that a life of extreme adversity is beneficial. And then there's other characters in the world that hold the ordinary life viewpoint. And then through the protagonist fighting this antagonist and going through way more adversity than they ever imagined they were going to, that through that, now you have this question back and forth of like, was it really worth the pain and suffering that this protagonist brought on himself or allowed to happen? But, and this is again an important element, part of the reason that Whiplash works is because it's not an anime fight, right? It's where it is a dark mentor is the antagonist, right? Fletcher is this dark mentor character, and that's the reason that it works. And so in your story, if it's like this protagonist directly fighting the antagonist, it doesn't really work in the Whiplash sense because you don't have the same sort of setup, right? You don't have a character that's pursuing this sort of ideal of greatness. You have a character that's trying to beat this other character, and so then it doesn't really work. And I think that's really the core of what's seemingly not working with this philosophical conflict is that I think you're trying to take a Whiplash philosophical conflict, but then separate it from its external elements, which it is not separatable from, and then place that philosophical conflict into this straight up, one side versus other side fight battle. And then you were sort of losing the philosophical conflict in the weeds there because the external worlds are misaligned.
Okay, I gotcha. Okay. So what would be the solution to this dilemma?
Well, the solution to the dilemma is either you need to think up a totally different philosophical conflict or you need to change your external conflict, right? Because we have this trinity of external conflict, emotional conflict, and philosophical conflict. And in your story, you have a misaligned external and philosophical conflict, which means one of them has to change.
Okay, I got you. Okay. By the way, random question, but
Yeah.
hopefully it connects to this. You said that you've seen a couple of anime, right?
I've seen a few. I've seen Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, One Punch Man, Death Note, and I watched the first season of Berserk.
Oh shoot, Berserk of all.
Wasn't a huge Berserk fan, but
Yeah, I got you. Yeah, for sure. That's too much for me, though.
You're not a Berserk fan?
No, it's way too dark. I will say this: like, out of all the anime characters that I know, Guts is he's gone through the worst life. I don't see no other character beating him in terms of adversity that he has gone through and overcome.
Mm-hmm.
But what I was about to say was that, so you never seen an anime called Attack on Titan?
I have not. I have seen the pilot of Attack on Titan. I have not seen anything else. I have heard great and excellent things, but I have not seen Attack on Titan.
Ah, darn. Okay. Because I have a point that might relate to this, but I don't want to potentially spoil you on this. Shoot.
It is something that I probably will get around to watch. Of all the things I need to watch, Attack on Titan is definitely on the list.
Okay.
But
so I gotta either change the philosophical conflict or change the external conflict.
Correct. That's where your issue is. We found it. Took us some time, but the issue is you're trying to make Whiplash with an external world that doesn't function in the same way.
Okay. And what would you say would be the external conflict in my story?
Well, you have a clear war, right? You have a war conflict, right? The war of the antagonist versus the protagonist. So in that sense, you need to have the characters that are either actually philosophically opposed or seemingly philosophically opposed. They have to act the reason that in Whiplash the protagonist and the antagonist hold the same viewpoint of greatness is because they are aligned on that viewpoint, going after the same goal together. And then you have some of the other more minor characters that are sitting on the other viewpoint opposing them. And so the external opposition of the antagonist is coming at him, and the protagonist is consenting to that, right? Like they want to be here, right? In a way with your character, it's like, oh, we have this huge antagonist that has come. Now we have to beat them for the survival of our people. And that's a fundamentally different conflict.
Okay. I understand what you're saying. Because because part of my issue is that I was trying to like for the villain's philosophical conflict.
Mm-hmm.
I was trying to like I was trying to find two different conflicts within that specific conflict, because if I was going to say that they both had the same belief, except that one of them, it's kind of like Detective Somerset and John Doe and
Mm-hmm.
Seven. It was like it was both on the same side of the conflict, but one was on the extreme.
Right.
I was trying to do that with these two characters.
Yeah, I mean,
Because
okay. So if you did it that way, then you would say that they both believe that humans need extreme adversity, and then he fights this antagonist that puts him through absolute hell, and he comes out the other side being like, you know what? Maybe an ordinary life isn't so bad.
Okay. Because I got you. Because again, the extreme part of the antagonist belief is that, well, one, he believes that it is it's right to inflict hardship on others, and he also believes that those that can't overcome a hardship should be basically killed. That's like the extreme part of his belief.
Mm-hmm.
So the balance aspect of that belief would be just believing that and knowing that adversity is necessary to become stronger in life. Correct?
Yeah, but I think we would want to actually see a shift in the character so that so that someone is arcing here, right? Because like right now, no one would be arcing. Have you written out?
They both be.
Yeah, like
Sorry.
they would essentially be sitting on this side in the beginning, and then they would end on that same side in the end, and you don't have really a character change.
They both be flat character arcs.
Right.
Okay. Because you said that in a flat character arc story, the main character doesn't change, but the characters associated with the character change.
Right. So there could be a world where you take the other characters that the protagonist is protecting, and they sort of all realize that he's right through this, in the sense of he wins and becomes super powerful because of it, and they're like, oh wow, like this guy's the top G now, and we should all be top Gs.
Okay. Well, this is very insightful. This is I gotta revamp this, reorganize it, figure this out.
Yeah, I would start getting into the maybe even you have to I think it's worth thinking about this positioning. I think you definitely got some brainstorming to do on how you actually want this to play. And hopefully this recording isn't totally and completely unwatchable. Who knows?
Oh shoot, you're right about that. Oh no.
We will see.
Oh man. Okay. Shoot.
I've been live the whole time, so we'll hope for the best.
Okay. And one more question.
I think we're gonna pull it down there, Stevenson, and we're gonna have Spring.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Spring's been waiting. Thanks for hopping on, bro. I'll see you in the next one.
I'm sorry.
No, you're good. You're good.
Okay.
Thanks for hopping on.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right. Jersey Dave, if you want to be on directly talking to me, join the Discord. It is linked below. We are going to bring up Spring, and he is going to be the last today. And then we're going to wind things down. What's going on, Spring? How are you?
I'm doing good, actually. How about you?
Doing well, man. What's your question today?
So it's actually two questions. I hope I don't make it too long.
Go for it.
It's two.
Go for it.
You still remember me? Still remember me from the last time we speak, right?
Of course.
About my project. my project.
Refresh my memory on your story.
Okay. So the thing that I'm struggling right now is philosophical conflict and characters.
Okay.
So, oh wait, okay. Let me start with the philosophical conflict. So I already discussed with you that the main character, right? So, so when you told me that I needed to flesh out the story more like I knew I know like one of them has to be like one of the main characters because I didn't think I fleshed out his wants and beliefs enough. So, and I did.
Okay.
I've come up with a few actually. So, so what do you still remember from last time?
Go ahead and refresh my memory on your story, and also for everyone watching now.
Okay, so it's a. I think the story was about like I was like trying to create a story from like the Five Nights at Freddy's universe. I think.
Oh, okay.
I think
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
okay. So the philosophical conflict that I'm trying to get is like okay, so we have this character, right? He lost his brother from the pizzeria, like he lost his brother from like the pizzeria, right? Because he just went missing and all that and stuff. And then a few years later, he dedicated his whole life for this, his whole like life just to get his brother back. So like, but I didn't make it clear. So the conflict I'm trying to get is between the main character and the kids that are trapped inside of the animatronics because like so so I've established that he's trying to save his brother, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what? So the conflict that I'm trying to get from the animatronics is like, oh, he just wants to save his brother, like he doesn't want to save us. We went missing at the time that his brother went missing. So like, what? Why didn't? Why should we trust this guy to like save his brother and like?
Mm-hmm.
Sorry,
You're fine.
I'm fine. Is it clear?
You're good. Keep going.
Okay. So the philosophical conflict is main character tries to I don't know. I don't really know if this is clear enough, so just bear with me here.
Yeah, go for it.
The phil-
We're working on it.
so the idea is the main character is trying to get his brother back, right?
Mm-hmm.
So but the kids inside those suits remember him and he also remembers his brother and the point that I'm trying to get is like, oh wow, he doesn't want to save us either. He forgot about us.
Mm-hmm.
So what can you take away from that?
I mean, I think it's a start. I don't have a particular like why doesn't he want to save them from a philosophical standpoint? I don't know. It's not super clear to me yet, but I think you have something that's externally clear. He wants to save his brother, and the kids in the that are stuck in the animatronic suits are his enemy. And I think right now that I don't know what you have right now, like from an outline perspective or whatever, but honestly, and this might sound like crazy advice from me, Mr. Philosophical Conflict, but I think you just keep working on that external conflict until it becomes clearer to you, because you have an external conflict and you have an emotional connection in the sense of his brother is, he wants to save his brother. There's that emotional connection there. I think you just continue developing those elements and then see what comes forward. Because by working on the external conflict and by clarifying it, you also are working on the philosophical conflict, even if unconsciously. Because again, like I talked about, story is a trinity. Story is a 3-in-1. It is external conflict. There's the external layer. There's the emotional layer. And there is the philosophical layer. And these layers are inseparable to each other, right? So just like how I was discussing with I believe it was Spencer at the beginning of this call, where I was saying that how he's positioning the characters in his werewolf western are also making immediate, like they come with their own sort of philosophical baggage, in the sense of, if he makes that werewolf character a Union U.S. Marshal, now it's coming in with that philosophical baggage of being a police officer and all of that. And so I think right now you have something that is getting clear on the external layer and the emotional layer. And honestly, I wouldn't even trip you up right now and get super into the philosophical layer. I think you go into your story structure, I think you go into your scene outline, and I think you go into getting clearer on these characters, right? You get clearer on the protagonist, you get clearer on his brother, and you get clearer on who exactly are these other characters. Like, what makes them the characters that are trapped in the suits, what makes them important, how are they connected? And then over time, I think we can come back to the philosophical layer. But right now, and this is something that I want everybody who's listening to this to hear me say. If you have something that you feel like is working on this layer and this layer, but you're not quite sure on the philosophical layer, I don't want you stopping completely and waiting until you get this perfect and full sense of the philosophical layer of your story, because you can learn so much about what it is you're trying to say and what your themes are by following your external layer and by following your emotional layer, because again, stories are a trinity. By working on these other layers, they will reveal more about your story and they will reveal more depth, because ultimately your story is always autobiographical, because you are the one coming up with 100% of the ideas, and you have all sorts of unconscious and conscious beliefs within you that will eventually well up and bubble up and become part of the story. So I would recommend that you work on your structural outline and your characters and your scenes, and then you could even bring that stuff to stream, and then we could begin to glean what you might want to say from a deeper level. But I wouldn't let it totally trip you up right now in the story.
So, from based on what you said, what I need to do now is like develop the external and the emotional layer.
Totally.
So like I can get a better understanding of what I'm trying to say. Is it clear?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
By
Okay, so
Go ahead.
okay, you can continue.
By creating that depth on the external and the emotional, you will over time find things for that deeper layer, right? Don't follow the fun, follow what's working, add detail and add ideas to what is working in the story. Don't trip yourself up and stop and say, oh, well, Tyler said that my story has to have this deep, deep depth, so I need to find that first before I go back to having fun and building my Five Nights at Freddy's world. Do the fun parts. Add in the detail there and allow your mind to be on that stream of consciousness, and then allow these deeper ideas to find you when they come.
Okay. That sounds pretty good to me. So yeah, that's it, man. That's all I wanted to ask. All I need to do now is take your advice, just put it on the writing phase, and let's see what we can come up with. And I hope that I can share it to you when I can share the process with you the next time we meet.
Excellent. I look forward to it.
Okay. Thanks, man. That's
Thanks.
all I wanted to ask.
Thanks for hopping on today. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you have found this stream helpful. I hope it has been enjoyable to you. I hope you learned something, and I hope you had a good time. I will be streaming tomorrow. Not quite sure what time. I got kind of a busy schedule tomorrow, but I will find a time slot that works and makes sense, and I will be streaming once again. We're going 5 for 5 this week. 5 for 5. Errors on the stream, technical difficulties, I don't care. We're going 5 for 5, ladies and gentlemen. I'll be streaming tomorrow. I hope you all enjoyed. I definitely had a great time. Thank you all to those that asked questions. And again, if you ever want to see the full live stream recordings, you can find them under the live tab on my YouTube channel. If you haven't given the stream a like, I'd love it if you could give it a like, subscribe to me, and I'll see your lovely faces and hear your lovely voices tomorrow. Talk soon, everybody. Peace.